Good morning. Welcome to our Sunday service. My name is Jack Lohr. I am the Vice President of the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. Today, we welcome neighbors from the Unitarian Church of Staten Island and Central Unitarian Church in Paramus, and their Director of Religious Education, Lynn Sedora. It's good to have each one of you here with us today. We begin our service with an acknowledgement of the land. Our congregational space sits on land stolen or taken by deceit from people of the Wolf and Turkey clans of the Lenni Lenape and our neighbors in Ringwood, New Jersey, the Turtle clan of the Ramapo Lenape. We also acknowledge that we are beneficiaries of the forced labor of enslaved Africans. This is the truth. We say it not to cast shade upon ourselves, but to enable worship in the light of a true context. Again, this week, we say thanks to the team that puts the weekly service together. Thank you to each one of you. The Unitarian Society of Ridgewood has gathered for over a century to build community, deepen relationships, further justice, and learn to live with love in the world. Here we affirm all people, every age, sexual orientation, education, history, race, ethnicity, economic status, mental and physical health, gender, and body. We are one family, connected to the earth and everything in existence. We look to love to heal and transform us all. If this is your first time visiting, welcome. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can get connected to our weekly emails, check our website, or connect to Anne, our congregational administrator, at usr.membership1@gmail.com. We would also love for you to fill out the Google form being dropped in the chat so we can follow up with you. And join us next Sunday at 10 a.m. on Zoom as Marilyn Maney leads our service. #LandBack. What is justice for tribes? This week, because I have longed to know you better, and because I fear we miss out on opportunities to care for each other, I'm asking you to join me in a ritual of joys and sorrows. You are invited to post your sharing in the chat. I won't read them aloud, but we'll take them to heart, and I'll give a list to Reverend Sarah when she returns from vacation. I've asked Lynn Sedora to lead the people's response. I'd invite you to join in if you're following the order of service. Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection.
A spiritual community where we find meaning.
Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified.
A caring community where our sorrows are lessened.
We take this moment to reflect on our joys and sorrows and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. If you would like, now is the time for you to post a brief expression of a special joy or sorrow in the chat, or post a nonverbal emoji to indicate your silent sharing. May we remember those who have shared, those they have named, and those we hold in silence in our hearts. So may it be. So welcome. Today's service focuses on one aspect of the UU's sixth principle, We covenant to affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. On this Sunday, before the 76th anniversary of the US bombing of Hiroshima, we are looking for ways to promote more than just a goal of world free of nuclear weapons. We are seeking to do something constructive to bring that world closer. We join people all over the planet in next week's simple strategy, #Cranes for Our Future. It's a small step with a deep meaning, and it's one that we can all succeed at. Early in our services, we like to stop and listen for the sound of a bell. In the practice taught by Thich Nhat Hanh, we remind ourselves that in order to be present, we have to stop running. Otherwise, we will run for all of our life and never arrive. We practice with the bell in order to arrive and feel at home. Every time we hear a bell ringing, even the ringtone on our phone or a car horn can be a bell, we are invited to stop thinking, to stop talking, and to go back to our in-breath and our out-breath. All of us are exiles and immigrants, even if we haven't left our country of origin. We somehow never feel fully at home. Until we do, we cannot be happy. We cannot rest. Some in our Unitarian Universalist communities, a very few, have found it, and they have peace. They have happiness. They have solidity. If you have not yet arrived, if you have been running a lot, if you've been very tired, this is a time for you to stop and really listen. When you hear the bell, stop running. Be at peace. Breathe and listen.
Unitarian Universalism is diverse in its theology, and there is diversity in the symbols that hold meaning for us. One symbol we share is our flaming chalice. Developed as a symbol of the Unitarian Service Committee as it helped to rescue folks in peril during World War II, the chalice has long stood for hope in challenging times. It remains for us a solid reminder of our strength and our values in moments of injustice and uncertainty. If you have a chalice at home, we invite you to light yours as we light ours. Please join in the words that will be on your screen. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action as we gather together in the circle of community. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Jack, you're muted.
Okay, there it is. One of the gifts we have discovered during the pandemic, or may have discovered, is what a blessing it can be just to be able to breathe freely, to have a nose that is not stuffed, to have lungs that can pump the air. What a privilege to enjoy our breathing. So I invite you to breathe in and feel that you are alive. This is a wonderful thing. You don't need to be a trained meditator in order to breathe in. You can do this. Breathing in, enjoy the fact that you are breathing in. This is wonderful, mindful breathing. You may use a few words to guide your thinking. I have arrived. Arrived where? I am coming into my own. I'm coming back to myself. I am restoring myself, body and mind together. So often in our distraction, our body is here, but our mind is elsewhere. Caught in the past, caught in the future, caught in our worries or our anger. The practice of mindful breathing in is to bring mind and body together. Then we have a home to go back to. We can produce our true presence. I have arrived. And when you breathe out, we celebrate our arrival by thinking, I am home. Let's try this in a little time of silent meditation. Breathing in, I have arrived. Breathing out, I am home. Our home is in the here and the now, because life is in the here and the now. Don't cling to the past. The past is no longer. Do not get upset about the future. The future is not yet. Life can only be lived in the present moment. You and I can be happy in this present moment.
Good morning. I'm Lynn Sedora from Central Unitarian Church. And the reading I'm going to share with you this morning is from an article titled, My Grandparents Survived Hiroshima. A white actor was cast to tell that story, by Aya Tasaki. Sadeko Sasaki was 2 years old on August 6, 1945, when the United States dropped the first atomic bomb in history on Hiroshima, Japan. At age 11, she was diagnosed with leukemia, which developed from the intense effects of the radiation. While sick, she took to heart an old saying that went, "Fold 1,000 paper cranes and your wish will come true." It is said that she folded more than that many, using any scraps of paper she could find in hopes of recovering. Sadeko passed away in 1955 when she was only 12 years old. Now, Hollywood has decided to tell her story, framed by the experience of a white woman. This week, Variety reported that actress Evan Rachel Wood would star in 1,000 Paper Cranes, a film based on Sadeko's story. She is set to play Eleanor Kaur, a Canadian-born American author who wrote a children's book about Sadeko. Once again, instead of allowing a person of color to be the centerpiece in their own story, Hollywood has decided to co-opt the story and use white characters to tell it. I am a third-generation atomic bomb survivor, known as Hibakusha in Japanese. My maternal grandparents and paternal grandmother have lived in Hiroshima their entire lives, and my parents were born and raised there. Hiroshima and its tragical history run in my veins and are etched into my bones. And with that comes a responsibility to safeguard how the story of Hibakusha is retold and used. Will the film adaptation of 1,000 Paper Cranes capture the nuance of this Hibakusha story? Or will it simply weave together Sadeko's life and Kor's role in bringing her international attention into a fluffy tearjerker with no real depth? Sadeko's story is deeply personal to Hiroshima survivors and their families, not only because it is too familiar, but also because her determination to fold 1,000 paper cranes became a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity. Though the director of the film, Richard Raymond, released a statement claiming that he recognized the concerns and had the support of Sadeko's family, the Hiroshima Peace Museum and the Hiroshima Film Commission, it is unclear whether this will translate into real input. I don't want to see the story misrepresented in a movie that implicitly alleviates the United States of its guilt by portraying a Canadian-American woman who shared Sadeko's story. Nor do I wish to see a retelling of Hiroshima that enables Japan to embrace the victim narrative that perpetuates the erasure of inconvenient truths about the country's own history and guilt. So my question for the film's producer is simple. With Hollywood's history of opportunism and whitewashing, do they truly believe that they can tell this story in all of its historical weight and complexity? And can it be achieved by centering the narrative, however slightly, on an outsider who never lived through the wreckage? If the answer is no, then it shouldn't bother.
Vern Partlow, a reporter for the Los Angeles Daily News and amateur folk singer, had been interviewing atomic scientists after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Clever and humorous writer that he was, he dashed off Talking Atom, a song, and premiered it at a New Year's Eve party in 1945. The song struck a chord, and over the next 4 years it was published, made into a short movie of Partlow performing it, and covered by Pete Seeger, the Sons of the Pioneers, and others. It was even being rehearsed for release by Bing Crosby. But there was a reaction. Anti-communist groups and journalists attacked the song, and by the 5th anniversary of the bombings, distribution was canceled by Columbia Records and RCA Victor. Partlow was branded as a communist before the House Un-American Activities Committee, fired from his job and unable to get work. Here is that song.
I'm gonna preach you a sermon about old man Adam. Now I don't mean the Adam in the Bible, that. No, I don't mean the Adam Mother Eve made it. I mean that thing that science liberated. You know, Einstein said he was scared. If he's scared, boy, I'm scared. You know, life used to be such a simple joy. The cyclotron was a super toy. Folks got born, they'd work and marry, and Adam was a word in the dictionary. Then it happened. These science guys from every clime, they all pitched in with overtime. Before you knew it, the job was done. They'd hitched up the power of the doggone sun, put a harness on old Sol, splitting atoms right and left, while the diplomats were splitting hairs. Course the cartel crowd up and put on a show. They're gonna turn back the clock on the UNO. Grab a corner on atoms and maybe extinguish every damn atom can't speak English. Down with foreign-born atoms. America for American atoms. Step right up, folks, let's atomize world peace. But the Atoms International, in spite of hysteria, flourishes in Utah, also Siberia. The atom don't care about politics or who got what in whichever fix. All he wants to do is sit around and have his nucleus bombarded by neutrons. Yes, it's up to the people, 'cause the atom don't care. You can't fence him in, he's just like air. And whether you're white, black, red, or brown, the question is this when you boil it down: to be or not to be? That is the question. Yes, and the answer to it all ain't military datum, like who gets there fastest with the mostest atoms. But the people of the world must decide their fate. We gotta stick together or disintegrate. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men could be cremated equal.
Our second reading this morning is from a review of 2034, a novel of the next World War. The book was written by Elliot Ackerman and James Stavridis. The review is by Francis Fukuyama. It appears in the website American Purpose. It brings this concern about the atom into the present moment. Fukuyama writes this: "It has worried me for some time that we have not adequately imagined how a future war with China might start. The prospect of such a war is so horrendous that it is natural that ordinary people in and out of the region choose to shy away from the subject. Nonetheless, if we want to prevent such a war, we need to think through these scenarios very carefully and plan against them. There is growing recognition of Taiwan's vulnerability to Chinese military power, which few people have taken seriously until now. Over the past year, China has been behaving very much more aggressively towards Taipei, and Chinese leaders' rhetoric about using military action to force unification has grown more frequent and shrill. It would be foolish not to take this announced intention seriously. During the Cold War, strategists thought through a number of canonical scenarios for a NATO-Warsaw Pact conflict, like a Soviet grab for Berlin or Hamburg, or a full-scale invasion across the North German plain. Scenarios for how the two sides might move up an escalation ladder led to the concept of extended deterrence and a new investment in conventional forces that would make rapid escalation less likely. While planners in places like US Indo-Pacific Command have been working hard on such contingencies, there has been very little public discussion of what a future war in East Asia might look like, or the escalatory ladders they would involve. This is what makes a work of fiction like 2034 particularly valuable." The hymn that we're invited now to sing expresses our vision and commitment for one world. Please join in singing "We Would Be One." The music is printed in the order of service. You may know the tune, Finlandia, but the words will be on your screen.
Our hymn of love to pledge ourselves. to greater service, with love and justice, strive to make us free.
Okay, there we go. Good morning. I'm having some technical difficulties this morning, and I have a very whiny cat sitting with me, so bear with me. Good morning. My name is Dawn Walter, and I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. Part of laying the groundwork for the future of our congregation is making our weekly offering that helps to sustain the work of this community. This summer, we are resuming our Share the Plate program, which means that 50% of our Sunday collection will be donated to an organization in need. Share the Plate means that every offering will not only help sustain our USR community, but will also provide support in our wider community. For July and August, we will be assisting the Center for Food Action. While many of us are returning to something approaching normalcy, the pandemic has left many New Jerseyans struggling to feed their families. The summer is always a slow time for donations for CFA, and this summer will be harder than usual. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
So today's message is what I would call overdetermined. For years as a minister, when I wasn't taking vacation on the first Sunday in August, I would preach on the anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I can't not talk about this today. I don't remember when I first learned about the atom bomb. Something must have crept into my consciousness during the duck and cover hiding under my desk in grade school. Maybe it was visiting my grandfather's house and discovering he was building a fallout shelter in his basement. I do know, however, when it came home to my heart. In the 8th grade, our biology class made a trip to the Army Medical Museum, which later was called the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology and has other names, I think, today. The exhibit there included a display of color photographs that were taken by US Army doctors of the effects of the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I have been haunted by Hiroshima ever since. I went on to read John Hersey's book. I read Neville Shute's On the Beach. They touched my soul deeply. As a Quaker and pacifist, at the time I was a conscientious objector during the Vietnam era. After the anti-war demonstrations, our attention turned to the nuclear threat. By then, my wife Janice and I had 4 children. We dragged them to the Central Park demo in 1982, at the time maybe the biggest demonstration about anything ever held. We read them the story of Sadako and the 1,000 paper cranes and enlisted everyone we knew for a period of about a year to make several thousand paper cranes and send them to the governments of the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union. I guess the next thing we did, my wife and I attended a weekend with singer-songwriter and now Unitarian minister, Fred Small. From him, I learned the song Cranes Over Hiroshima. In January of 2002, I was privileged to make a pilgrimage to Hiroshima to visit the original Ground Zero. In addition to the statue of Sadako, there were thousands of colorful paper cranes on her statue. Somewhere between the Peace Park, the museum, and Sadako's school, I found something. Was it reconciliation, equanimity, or peace? But you get the picture. This is a deep part of my consciousness. And therefore, I am unable to understand my nation's first use of the bomb and our continued faith in nuclear weapons. And it is a kind of religious faith. It seems to me our stance on nuclear proliferation is utterly hypocritical. I'm going to be jumping around a bit during this message so that I can get it all in. I hope to just bear with me. I was able to check out Doris Armstrong's history of the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood and learned that Homer Schaefer, our minister during World War II, was an absolute pacifist. Some members thought he took pacifism to an unsympathetic extreme. When one of the members' sons was killed in the war, Schaefer's response was reportedly, "What did you expect?" Schaefer belonged to the Ridgewood Exchange Club. He talked twice there in 1946 on the subject, "One World or None." His depiction of an atomic war was taken with deep seriousness by the Exchange Club, but home at the Unitarian Society, he anguished. I was astonished at the attitudes expressed. I call on people and find people willing to involve scores of millions in death. I don't really know where USR stands today because, like most of America, we seem mostly to be ignoring the danger of nuclear war. In his 2017 book, The Doomsday Machine, Confessions of a Nuclear War Planner, Daniel Ellsberg makes clear the dangers and potential for disaster that our possession of nuclear weapons creates for the planet. During the 2016 presidential campaign, he said, Donald Trump was reported to have asked a foreign policy advisor about nuclear weapons, "If we have them, why can't we use them?" Ellsberg says, correct answer, we do. Contrary to the cliche that, quote, "no nuclear weapons have been used since Hiroshima and Nagasaki," close quote, US presidents have used our nuclear weapons dozens of times in crises, mostly in secret from the American public, though not from adversaries. They have used them in the same way, the precise way that a gun is used when it is pointed at someone in a confrontation, whether or not the trigger is pulled. 3 months ago, Daniel Ellsberg released classified documents revealing how close we came to using nuclear weapons in 1958 against China. He says he released these documents because he's scared that current tensions with China may be headed in the same direction. He says, you shouldn't be confident that the current calculations are any less crazy. Last year, I was privileged to watch the live feed from the memorial at Hiroshima from beginning to end. I was particularly struck by the message of the governor of Hiroshima Prefecture. He alluded to what some have called nuclear theology. He said, Hiroshima and Nagasaki have been desperately longing for nuclear abolition, yet we are disappointed time and time again. Why? Because there are people and countries who believe in and rely on nuclear deterrence. However, the theory that the fear of absolute destruction will deter enemy attack is but an idea, a myth people have decided to share. Fellow Unitarian Universalists, it is up to you and me to change this narrative, to abandon the nuclear theology of faith in these weapons. If there is to be peace on earth, it must begin with me and you. If you've been following our services this summer, you may discern a theme. I would call it complexification. We are trying to enrich our understanding of the complexity of all of these issues we care about. discovering a connection between disability rights and the Declaration of Independence, learning about the Tulsa Massacre, hearing the music of war, seeing eugenics in our Unitarian and Universalist ancestors' concerns about world population. Today's topic is, in a sense, both simpler and more stark. In truth, I tell you, the nuclear option is no choice at all. The options are simply to be or not to be. The complexity is in persuading ourselves to shake off the depression of nuclear numbing and to find energy for action. Now I ask you, would it help if I could find those color medical images of the atomic bomb casualties? Will dramatic descriptions of the catastrophe of nuclear disaster change our inactivity? Will tales of the stupid things that nuclear experts have said about how to survive or how to win a nuclear exchange? I don't think so. Instead, I look for signs of hope. This year, 2021, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, or also called the Nuclear Weapon Ban Treaty, entered into force. It is the first legally binding international agreement to comprehensively prohibit nuclear weapons with the ultimate goal of being ultimately to totally eliminate them. For those nations that are party to it, the treaty prohibits the development, testing, production, stockpiling, stationing, transfer, use, and threat of use of nuclear weapons, as well as assistance and encouragement to the prohibited activities. For nuclear armed states that enter the treaty, it provides a time-bound framework for negotiations leading to the verified and irreversible elimination of its nuclear weapons program. It has been signed by 86 nations and ratified by 54, but not, of course, any of the nuclear powers. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton has introduced a bill in Congress that would commit the US to eliminate nuclear weapons in concert with the other nuclear possessors, as outlined in the Nuclear Weapon Ban Treaty, and redirect the expenditures to peaceful ends. And on June 16th of this year, the US-Russia Presidential Joint Statement on Strategic Stability took note of the recent extension of the New START Treaty and reaffirmed the principle that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. Presidents Biden and Putin promised, consistent with these goals, the United States and Russia will embark together on an integrated bilateral strategic stability dialogue in the near future that will be deliberate and robust. Through this dialogue, we seek to lay the groundwork for future arms control and risk reduction measures. So I join today the optimistic and hopeful people who have created this initiative called Cranes for Our Future. Hashtag Cranes for Our Future was established by the Hiroshima Prefecture, Nagasaki Prefecture, the Nuclear Threat Initiative, Hiroshima Organization for Global Peace, and a broad coalition of institutions and public figures committed to a safer future for all the world without nuclear weapons. They express it this way: that the world hasn't suffered a nuclear bombing in 76 years is the result of diligence and diplomacy, grace, and good luck. Now, as we lose the generation that remembers when the bombs fell on Japan, we face new modern threats related to terrorism, cyber attacks, artificial intelligence, and a deteriorating arms control structure. Experts warn the risk of nuclear disaster is the highest it's been in years. So today, in the spirit of international cooperation and in honor of those who perished in the bombings in Japan 76 years ago, people from around the globe are coming together to make a powerful, unified statement for a more peaceful and prosperous world. In the future, they say, when we achieve a world free from nuclear weapons and other catastrophic threats, we will look back and see that it was made possible only after people acted collectively to demand it. So today I challenge you to get ready for Cranes for Our Future. Go to cranesforourfuture.org, learn more about this initiative. Then get some squares of paper, find a child. Remember, we're doing this for future generations, and make some cranes while talking about why you're doing it. If you go to cranesforourfuture.org, you'll find there a set of instructions, a video actually, on how to do a paper crane if you've never done it before. In the order of service today, there is a graphic that has pictures, but I find they're really only helpful if you've already learned how to make the cranes, to remind you. It is a small thing to make a paper crane. But Helen Caldecott, the Australian physician who is devoting her life to preventing nuclear annihilation, has described how our feeling of powerlessness beneath the cloud of atomic danger causes us to numb our emotions and prevent us from acting. To take one small step in the direction of freedom from tyranny can set free a tremendous surge of energy. Believe it. Try it. Do it. So may it be. We have now some special music written by Paul Hindemith, played by Donald Batchelor. Now please join in singing Our World is One World. The name of the tune is Chernobyl.
Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate we make a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The way we spend, the way we share, who are the rich or poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many woes, but where our hearts can hear a different call.
Please join us in the words for extinguishing the chalice. They can be found on your screen. We extinguish the flame, but may the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action burn bright in our hearts until we are together again.
I close with a benediction. May all our relations be happy, all beings near or far, all creatures great and small, all plants and minerals. May all our relations be happy. May we be well. May we be safe. May we be peaceful and at ease. So may it be.